I've talked a lot in the past about how team managed projects are terrible and should be avoided at all costs. Now, why do I say that, and why are team managed projects such a bad idea? And to be honest, I do use team managed projects myself from time to time, and I'll be going over those use cases a little bit later and exactly when and why I use them. Now, before I go into the big reason as to why I never recommend team managed projects, let's go over exactly what a team managed project is and how it works within the Jira environment. From an end user perspective, company and team managed projects do work fairly similarly. And the main key difference is that there is more limitation in the team managed project, not only with the feature set, but in the way that you actually manage the project itself. So team managed projects essentially were created for the ease of use and ability to stand up a project and administer one without really needing to get into the nitty-gritty of Jira administration, going through workflow configurations, screen schemes, screen configurations, and all that really in-depth Jira wizardry. So while they are easier to use and implement, they do pose a lot of limitations. Jumping into my diagram here, I have a team managed project on the left, company managed projects on the right, and global configuration on the bottom. And let's say I'm going to be making changes to a workflow within my project. These global configurations are actually completely siloed from team managed projects and cannot be used or referenced inside of those team managed projects. So in this case, I'll go to my project settings. I'll be going into my workflows and making those changes in the project itself. And this is where the limitations start to begin. Let's say that I have 5 development teams, each with their own unique project in Jira, and I want to unify a workflow between all of those project and all of those developer teams. Within a company managed project, I would go into the global configurations. I would build out the workflow here, and then we would map the company managed project configurations into our global configuration, and we would use the shared workflow between all 5, or in this case, those 2 projects. So this obviously proposes a big issue and is a problem for any teams that are relatively large and want unification across their Jira environment and across their teams. If I want to share anything from workflows to screen schemes to workflow validators, required fields, and more, you're able to do all of that with a company managed project just by creating those configurations and mapping them to the existing projects. So oftentimes when we start to consult teams on how to use Jira, they run into these bottlenecks and they don't actually know what the problem is. Majority of the teams that we end up working with, when we jump into their Jira environment, there are typically a lot of team managed projects actively in use. And before we could even start configuring any of the things that they actually want to do in Jira, we have to migrate them from those team managed to new company managed projects. And unfortunately, this isn't just done with the flip of a switch. We actually have to rebuild an entire project within Jira and then go through a process of moving and migrating all of the tasks and work items within the current team managed project to the new company managed one. So that is the biggest reason why I never recommend using a team managed project. Now, of course, there are rare use cases where team managed projects do sometimes make sense. And yes, I use them myself from time to time. So the first reason I would ever consider using a team managed project is specifically going to be for a personal task list. It means that nobody else in my organization is going to end up using this. It is solely designed for me to maybe manage my tasks or manage a small list of things that I wanted to keep track of without the context of my team. There's 2 primary things to keep in mind when using a project like this for tasks. First one being no fancy automations, and second one is no complex configuration. Now, of course, you have the ability to do all your basic stuff within these projects. You can create tasks with automation, add assignees and due dates, create subtasks, and a bunch of other basic things that you could do with automation. Sometimes these can get a little bit more advanced as well, but if you're trying to automate with anything across multiple projects, with assets, with custom fields, you're going to start running into a lot of limitations really quickly. And no complex configuration. Keep in mind that you can't share workflows, as we just went over. Same thing goes for screen schemes and field configurations, priority schemes, and more. All that is going to be out of scope for most team managed projects. The second reason I would use a team managed project is for a single use project. So this could be used for testing or keeping specific configurations separate and away from the rest of the Jira infrastructure. Now, oftentimes Sandbox is a much better solution for this, and I would highly recommend using a Sandbox over a team managed project for testing. But some teams don't have the premium version of Jira and don't have the Sandbox availability, or in some cases you want to test something out really quick without having to spin up a new Sandbox, in which case I've created temporary team managed projects to test those configurations, maybe some specific workflows, and more basic configurations that I don't want to affect the rest of Jira. Once I'm done with my testing, I'll typically want to delete a project like this and want essentially no remnants of its existence And if we create a company managed project, you'll have to start going through all the workflows that it automatically created, the screen schemes, the field configuration, and everything else that it was associated with in the Jira global issue configuration. And the third and final reason is for intentionally disconnected projects. This is going to be super, super niche, and I very, very rarely create a project like this. Sometimes I know when I'm going to have to be creating a lot of different fields, and I don't want those fields showing up in the Jira custom fields. I might just create a team managed project and add all those fields in there. That way my Jira custom fields aren't populated with hundreds of extra custom fields when only one project may need them. And there's two caveats to creating a project like this. Sometimes I will have a team working within these projects, and there's a few things to keep in mind with a project like this. In some cases, I do have teams working in a project that is team managed, that is intentionally disconnected. Usually that team is not going to be larger than maybe 5 people or so. Once you start going over 3 to 5, you start running into some limitations that may hinder your team's performance within that project type. And these are typically never going to be integrated across any other projects within Jira. You want this to intentionally be siloed and not associated with anything else. And one perk of this is obviously easy administration. Some things, if you're already used to within a company managed project, might be a little bit more difficult. For myself personally, I tend to fumble around a team managed project a lot more since I am very familiar with the UI and the way that the company managed projects are structured. I sometimes have a bit of a hard time finding exactly where certain features are for a team managed project. So hopefully that helps give you some context on when I would personally use a team managed project. And honestly, if you're debating any of these points and you think that maybe you should or shouldn't go with a team managed project, I would just edge on the side of caution and say go with a team managed project. It's going to be a lot more scalable and you're going to run it into a lot less headaches down the road. Yes, company managed projects tend to be more administration heavy and are a little bit harder to configure. That also comes with a major benefit of customization and having the ability to do pretty much anything that you want within that project type. If you're looking for any more information or want to partner up with us and our team to help your Jira environment work better for you, feel free to reach out at the first link down below, and we cannot wait to hear from you.